During a season in the NASCAR Cup Series, fans can see teams duke it out in 36-point paying races as well as a handful of expedition races spread throughout the year. Now with the new playoff format, it feels like there is no one race that is more important than the rest, except for of course the championship finale race if your driver's in the championship 4. However, NASCAR has made sure that no matter how the championship format is placed, that there are 4 races that stand out head and shoulders above the rest. We call these races the crown jewel events. Those 4 events are the Daytona 500, Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte, the Southern 500 at Darlington, and the race at Indianapolis. A fan could separate these races out as the biggest, the longest, the oldest, and the richest. However, as time went by, one of the crown jewels no longer looks as prestigious as the other 3 events. It went from having one of the biggest entry lists in modern NASCAR history to having its race date be changed multiple times in order to keep relevance in the sport. That race is one at Indianapolis, a track that holds so much history in its 112-year lifespan thanks to the iconic Indianapolis 500. NASCAR made the jump to the iconic racetrack in 1994, and many people thought at the time that the Brickyard 400 would eventually take over the Daytona 500 as the biggest race to win. A statement that is now laughable to today's fans. Just this year alone, NASCAR made the move to no longer race around the 2.5-mile oval, but rather the inner road course that Formula One used to race on all the way to 2005, only to have it end as being one of the most disappointing races of the season. Which begs the question, what happened to this iconic race? What made it such a turn-off event for so many fans of the sport? 2008 Brickyard 400 is a race that will go down to many as one of the worst races in NASCAR history. With an unlikable car making its debut on the racetrack, a newly paved surface, and a tire that was not up to the demands of the rough surface, it was destined to be an utter nightmare from the start. A race where we would see some of the slowest speeds at the racetrack and the most competition cautions in any NASCAR event. This is the story of the tire debacle at the 2008 Brickyard 400.
That's all it's going to be is for second spot. Caution flag is out, the race is over. Jeff Gordon wins the Brickyard 400 for a 4th time, a dominating performance today.
After the 2004 Brickyard 400, Indianapolis Motor Speedway Oval was scheduled to be repaved for the first time in over 9 years. It was reported that around 36,500 tons of asphalt would be laid in 2 to 3 layers around the iconic oval. In order to make the new surface smooth for drivers and teams, the Speedway decided to diamond grind the racetrack, a procedure that digs grooves into the racetrack. This gave the track an extra smoothness and more traction around the turns at the cost of causing more wear to the tires. This would immediately lead to tire issues for the 2005 US Grand Prix, as Formula One teams were suffering tire failures at some of the fastest parts of the race circuit. This would lead to 70% of the teams retiring the race before it even started, as well as Formula One never returning to the iconic racetrack ever again. As bad as the surface was for Formula One cars, it seemed like the repave did not really have an effect on NASCAR tires between 2005 to 2007. Races did see a few cautions from time to time, however the racing and attendance was not suffering by any means. That would all change in 2008 when NASCAR would make the car tomorrow as the permanent car in the NASCAR Cup competition. A car that was larger and boxier than the design it replaced, however implemented dramatic safety improvements, cost less to maintain, and was intended to make for a closer competition. These drastic changes would play a big role in the lead up to the tire debacle at Indianapolis. In 2008, NASCAR and Goodyear would struggle throughout the year with compounds in the tires. It seemed like no matter what they did, a tire issue would become inevitable. NASCAR knew that if they didn't come up with a solution soon, it would lead to an eventual disaster. It's July 27th of 2008, and every driver and team is on the edge due to multiple incidents that have happened with the tires during the weekend's practice sessions. Everyone is wondering when the track will start to pack rubber, or the wear on the tires will get any better. Needless to say, it was one of the biggest topics in pre-race coverage.
I might be the first car to have a tire problem, blow a tire, bring out a caution, and I don't want to do that.
And the big question marks there are tires.
The fuel tanks will take them about 30, 35 laps, but these tires are such an unknown. These guys have no idea how far they'll go later in this race. NASCAR's going to give them a competition yellow at lap 10.
And again, just if you didn't catch the whole explanation of the situation, this racetrack surface, normally rough on tires anyway, takes a while to rubber in. Normally during Friday and Saturday practice and qualifying, that happens. The race ends up okay. It just hasn't happened this weekend. A combination of new tire, NASCAR's new car, whatever, but right now still struggling with tire issues.
NASCAR stated that they would have 2 competition cautions within the first 15% of the race. We would find out quickly that it was too long of a stretch for the tires.
Yeah, Jamie, he did hit that wall very hard. He was coming off the corner. Actually, it looks like Kurt Busch lost the car and then hit the right front of Kevin's car, maybe blowing that tire out, but they both hit the wall pretty hard.
Lead, and he has a tire going down. He is now 17 laps in, or making 18 laps into a run. He pitted, remember, back on lap number 7.
They're coming. Just stay high. Give them a little room.
And here's another tire blown out on the 42 car, Montoya.
Tire after tire was starting to wear out as the laps went by. Multiple teams would show cording with their tires, meaning that the wear was at its absolute limit. NASCAR was starting to realize that they would need to throw a competition caution within 10 laps before the tires wanted to explode. Even then, they weren't so lucky.
I can make it around, I think.
Matt Kenseth's it around. He knew he had slowed down and blew a right rear tire. You can see it blew the quarter off.
Caution's out.
Kenseth damage on the right side of his Ford.
He's right off the car, Chip. The whole right side's gone.
We'd seen him slow down and lose about 5 or 6 spots just a lap ago. Jamie?
Well, you guys were talking about what a great car he had, and Matt Kenseth radioed 2 laps ago and said, guys, I need to pit. I'm going to hang on right now, but you guys, I have to come in. My tires are gone, and you just saw what happened. He said, Chip, should I pit now? And boom, that was the end of it. He spun, guys.
That looks like an explosion underneath the right rear fender. Just blew part of the fender off.
Yep.
The situation was getting out of hand, so much so that the vice president of competition, Robin Pemberton, was on pit road attempting to comfort the crew chiefs and teams, while the president himself, Mike Helton, was in the broadcast booth indirectly apologizing for how bad the racing was. Teams would be at most running 75% of their full potential in order to get their cars to the next competition caution. When the race was all said and done, we found that the statistics were that 33% of the race was ran under caution, multiple teams and drivers suffered tire issues, and the average speed was only 115 miles per hour. The fear of an eventual disaster turned into a reality, and it happened at the second biggest race of the year. NASCAR would have multiple tire test sessions before the next race at Indy, but the damage was already done. A majority of the public talked negatively about the race and were even questioning whether it was a race worth even watching. The Brickyard 400 was always an exciting race to be a part of, now it was starting to lose its image. The 2009 Brickyard 400 would see an immediate dive in fan attendance as well as viewership. Some could argue that the financial crisis had played a role in the falling out of the Brickyard 400, but most people turned to this event in 2008. The race continually lost fan interest to the point that the race in 2020 only saw 50,000 fans in attendance, a number that was so much lower than the maximum occupancy of 250,000 that they were just seeing a few years before. NASCAR would start to get desperate to keep the race relevant. They would move the Indianapolis race to the final race of the regular season, trying to make it more intense. Then they would even move it to the 4th of July weekend slot, hoping to show patriotism to the fan base, but again, it failed. Now, they have resorted to the road course, and even then that would lead to more bad situations. At this point, the famed Brickyard 400 has all but vanished. Now, some hopefuls look to see the Brickyard 400 back on the oval, and NASCAR plans to do that in the distant future. The question is, when? Some people hope that with the new car coming into the sport, it will provide enough entertainment back to the Brickyard 400 to be considered as a major crown jewel event as it once was. Until then, we have to see the racetrack as it is in its current moment. A track that was all but ruined by a bunch of non-durable tires.